bit.
Go ahead, change the
Yeah.
slide.
Next slide.
Okay. My clinic today is basically telling you how you could think about going a model and doing a model design for your own railroad. Developing a design is a lot more than the track plan itself. In fact, the track plan follows your thoughts about how you want to behave on the train. To design an effective plan, you first need to understand the goals that you want in a layout, what kind of theme, what kind of prototype, what kind of era, what kind of operations. And then you mesh those goals with your constraints. How much space, money, skills, and time do you have to be able to do this? So all of that goes into the mix and gets mixed up into the process of thinking about that. I personally believe that it's extremely important to simply always know yourself. The point of making strategic planning your top priority is so that your design is targeted toward and aligns with your core interests and available resources. In other words, know yourself first and then design towards your true interests and your situation. For everything, there's a reason. Every element in your layout should have a purpose, even if it's only a supporting one. If it doesn't serve a purpose, don't incorporate it. The result will be a good overall design with a sense of utility, balance, and unity. What good design is not, it's not what you typically think about. It's not whether you use number 12 or number 18 minimum radius, or number 4 or number 6 turnouts, or some other technical minutia. It isn't just a track plan. Track is only one element, and it needs to be dovetailed seamlessly with scenery. And I want to almost underline that word, seamlessly. And the industries and structures, both singly and in combination. And if you do all that, you've got a well-integrated plan. The factors of good design, it doesn't matter how technically correct or how pretty the drawing looks on paper. If it never gets built, it falls short. What other hobbies think of it, the degree of exposure that it receives, and the number of compliments it gets are all totally irrelevant. Even though the track plan graphics are artistically pleasing to the eye, that too is totally irrelevant. To dig to a deeper level, a good design must focus like a laser on your true interests and your passions. Ask yourself the following questions. Where's your enjoyment going to come from? Is your interest in the satisfaction of assembly? Or do you want to look at a painting? Do you want to watch trains running or interact with them? How important are prototypical operations going to be to you? How often will you operate your layout, if that's true? How passionately and deeply immersed are you in the hobby? How much time do you have to work on the layout? And what is your skill level? Are you interested in improving your skill level? And the most important one, how long will you be in your house? More questions. Do you want to have or build a layout? You can have somebody build it for you. That's marked for that. Or you can build it yourself. Are you interested in photography? What aspect of the hobby overall do you enjoy the least? What is your modeling speed? Are you interested in highly detailed scenes, or do you have a good enough attitude? Are you modeling one place or a number of different places? How much layout do you want to bite off in terms of complete complexity and just plain old construction time? What most of us really want is ultimately to design a sense of being transported to a different time and place when we look at our layout and when we operate it. So if you're operating in the 1910 to 1920 time frame, You're transporting your audience and yourself to that place and time. The more clearly you can articulate the specifics of that end game, the more effective and successful the resulting layout will be. So designing towards your target, and what are your interests? Are you a rail fanner? Are you a structure builder? Are you into scenery? Are you into rolling stock and lots of locomotives? Do you understand scene composition? Are you kind of artsy-fartsy, viewing, movie watching kind of thing? Or are you going to be involved in operations, or all of the above? And most of us would probably conclude it's mostly all of the above. So managing the complexity of this endeavor, layout size, the effort is very proportionate to size. You have a little 4x8 sheet of plywood, or a couple of them, is a lot different than 28 feet by 28 feet. The effort's proportional to size. Its time and difficulty is visually created by how many turnouts, what kind of complex track features do you have? Are you using flex track or snap track? A 20-foot scene running through a grass field is large, but not complex. The same theme running through a deep canyon in a mountain range with raging rivers associated will take 10 times as long to build it. Factors of complexity: turnout count, square footage and bench width, bench work width. Can you really reach every piece of the bench work space? What kind of grades are required on your layout? Are you going to have urban scenery and therefore very dense scenery? Are you going to have any vertical scenery, a mountain complexity? Vertical scenery or mountains and, significant amount of lifts. Are you going to have bridges and tunnels, viaducts? Are you going to do double track main line? Are you going to have multiple decks? Are you going to use helixes to get between decks? And what's your age and what's your experience? In a maintenance and progress world, modelers very often grossly underestimate the amount of maintenance that you have to put into your layout. Layouts are inherently complex, and it's very important to see progress as you are building your layout, or it looks fruitless. How long are you prepared to wait for the running? Track, ballast, scenery, and structures all take a lot of time and space. And don't forget simple little things like roadways and sidewalks and whatever kind of water treatment you have for streams and rivers, be they even drainage ditches. A guy named Tony Koester has a very good book on some of this stuff, and his approach talks about good enough applying an 80-20 rule. The first 20% of the effort and detail levels produces 80% of the visual impact, except that only some of the key scenes will be actually finished. And, okay, sorry, cut me off. You're rushing me. So, and in all likelihood, some will remain unfinished. Okay, so on to my layout. Everything I have just said has been overridden by my desires to replicate my new layout based on my old layout. What worked for me in Lexington is working for me now in Louisville. I'm keeping most of my old plan, adapting it to the new real estate and fixing most of the prior weaknesses, and there were substantive weaknesses in the Versailles plan. I chose N scale way back in the 1990s. And I have accumulated a vast amount of modern engines and rolling stock. My plan is to continue with the fundamental direction that I took in the Versailles layout. My theme is Western Mountains, prototype, BNSF, Union Pacific, and anybody else that's running on that Northern Pacific route. The era is very modern. My operations are modern industries and their operations, and I am going to integrate JMRI dispatcher control. What are my constraints? Well, the most obvious one always when you start a new layout is keeping peace with the real estate manager. The space is in a finished basement bar area. I am getting a lot older and I'm running out of time. I built a similar layout in our last house, but had to demolish it and to move to a downsized house in Louisville. My real estate agreement with my best friend, I can use the 2 walls of the allocated space. My really important tools, I always like to bring tools into my clinics because it's a very important part of building a good layout. I have a very sophisticated laser measurement device. I use my computer. I'm now working on a Mac Mini M4 Pro. I use it a lot. I work on drafting on a 2D CAD program called McDraft. I have my layout built on a Rail Modeler Pro program. I have a small, tiny Black & Decker auto level laser that I can aim right down the track and make sure my track is perfectly lined up straight. I have a wire labeler that is absolutely critical. Every wire that's been put into my layout has a label at the one end and the same exact label on the other end. I have a hot knife that I use to cut my foam. Lots of power tools and electrical connector tools. You've seen some of that in my previous clinics here about wire connectors. Okay, so there's my real estate agreement. In the basement, there is, coming down the stairs, 2 sets of stairs. There are basically 2 walls, 28 feet in length each side. And Nancy has let me build the layout on that two sides. This was a completely finished bar area by the guys we bought the house from. There's no way I was going to interrupt the continuation on the right, but the home theater that's built in there and the rest of it is untouchable. So you can count 4x8 sheets of plywood and you can see where the layout started. My operating track plan now gets very messy looking here, but I had to have one dirty shot of the whole thing. The very far left-hand upper corner is what I brought from Versailles. It is basically my mountain area. And it fit into the corner there and it fits into the corner here. But everything else has changed. In Versailles, very quickly, I had about half this much space, but it was totally full of layout. And it had aisles all over the place. I used the island concept in building it and discovered very quickly that there's absolutely no way I could have an op session because there wasn't enough room to get people moving back and forth in those aisles. So that's not a problem here. Okay. I am operating in an unusual dispatcher model era of double main. My whole layout is on a double main. So while a lot of what most people do in operations is they got to worry about passing sidings and all that kind of stuff, none of that's my problem. I got a westbound and an eastbound track on double main. The only thing I can do to mess that up from an op standpoint is take a section of track out of service. And when you do that, you turn that into a single track and all of the other problems going along with it. So be prepared for something like that in my layout ops. So the full double main, I have 5 double crossovers. It has major reversing loops interfacing with the helix and the staging yard. It is bidirectional in operations, almost 2 miles in each direction. There are 2 principal towns, Whitefish and Columbia Falls, Montana, and 2 major industries. There's a big barley malt plant in Whitefish and a very large wood facilities project in Columbia Falls. The staging track plan is relatively new. I finished it. I finished that within the last year. Staging will be provided on a lower level layout covering the entire area below the upper right-hand side. It's a double-sided loop, 5-track, multiple train stacking staging yard accessed by a 6-layer helix dropping 16 inches below the main level. Each staging track will be nearly 40 feet long, and I'm assuming a Wi-Fi camera system, yard monitoring capability, and I already have that in my purchase hand and ready to be installed. The double-sided yard allows me to use a single common arrival and departure track to avoid backing trains down the helix and into the yard, which would be crazy to do. Okay? Building the bench work at both the upper level and staging area level is a very significant part of the job. As a fact, we spent a lot of time remodeling our new house in Louisville, and we captured some very good people who understand construction. And another fact, I am too old to be hauling around 4x8 sheets of plywood and cutting them up on a bench saw. So that led to more negotiations with Nancy, and we asked our Finnish carpenter to help me build the bench work. And that, in my case, was a really smart idea. My bench work is all 3/4-inch pine plywood construction, 3.5-inch by 3/4-inch plywood strips built into a 4x8 frame with all corners glued and screwed. The cross members are spaced inside of that 4x8 section every 24 inches. A 1/2-inch plywood deck is then screwed onto the frame and attached. The whole assembly then is attached to wall studs using hex slag bolts and supported out on side of it with 2-inch by 2-inch poplar legs with adjustable feet. And you could put an elephant on it. It's that strong. So while there's a lot of information on these, it's not intended for you to understand it completely, but these are the kind of drawings I created to give to my construction guy who built this all in his workshop and then assembled it on site. Next. The scenery and structure base, the entire deck of my layout will be covered by 1-inch thick polyfoam. I believe deeply in it from a layout standpoint. It gives me 13 scale feet of below ground space for playing around with drainage ditches and ponds on the layout. The section on the right side of the layout, which is above the staging area, has an additional 2 inches of foam and is covered by an additional 2 inches of foam. So 2 long sections of 2% grade provide access to 2 different level models, and I use that woodland scenic stuff that's kind of corrugated to get up that 2 inches, and that's a 2-inch grade. My scenery plan, if you look at the left-hand upper corner, that's all of what I brought from Versailles. My mountains, my snow shed, my business area, and so on. On the far right-hand side is the so-called Columbia Falls portion of the layout with a mountain sawmill and a now closed aluminum smelter kind of there for just filling space purposes. On the lower left-hand side, it has in the Whitefish Yard an extremely active engine maintenance facility, and then down on the very bottom, the Bud Barley plant, which those of you familiar with Versailles remember it from there. And almost everything's scratch built. Special structures event, I have a prototype snow shed already built with merit award. I have a mountain fire station already built with merit award. I have a prototype Shell gas station all built with merit award. My Budweiser barley processing plant is partially built and will be in the merit award world. I have almost finished a Whitefish Depot. That's been a subject of some discussion at some of our meetings here. And it's in the final business stage, and that was what I presented at the national convention, that depot. I am going to have a prototype forest wood mill, and it's in the design stage. There's nothing that's been done on it at all. I have a prototype McDonald's, modern McDonald's. It's in the early building stage, my fourth version. A little story I tell here with everybody. That McDonald's started out my life of scratch building. It was the first one I did was back in the 2010, 2012 timeframe. And we used to have meetings at my house in the evening every fifth week or something like that. And I would invite everybody over to see what I was doing and make comments and criticize them. And I had finished this McDonald's. The McDonald's is one that's in downtown Lexington. And I'm trying to do it from prototype. And I built it. And those of you who remember Fred Plymale, he came over to me after I was finished bragging about this McDonald's, and he said, "You know, it really sucks." And I said, "What do you mean, Fred?" He says, "It really sucks. It's just terrible." And I said, "What's wrong with it?" He says, "Look at the roof. The roof's got an opening. It sags. You haven't spent the right amount of time or the right amount of fixing to do that." And I said, I left that conversation really kind of pissed. I didn't think this was at all appropriate for him to tell the truth. Well, I went back about a week later and looked at it. He's really right. So I built the second prototype, and then I built the third prototype, and that's what exists right now, and I'm still not happy with it. So it will be my fourth prototype, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And then there are several town businesses and residential houses in the planning stage. All my structures are designed on McDraft. They're all designed for scratch build. I don't believe in spending a whole lot of money with the people who make plastic buildings. Civils. I exclusively use Caddo Unitrack, both wood tie and concrete tie. It is bulletproof and it is non-negotiable. Okay, there's people that say, "Why did you do that? Why are you using Caddo Track?" For those first two reasons, it is bulletproof, and I don't want to have to spend a lot of time chasing problems with the track. The smallest radius on my layout on the main level is 12 3/8. The smallest in the yard is 11. I will have visible tracks, fully ballasted to get rid of the Caddo loop, but I am not going to spend any time ballasting the stuff that nobody sees. It's stupid. Why would you waste the time? Main tracks are switched with high-speed turnouts. That's sort of an upgrade from what I had in Lexington. And my yard tracks are switched with modified number 4 turnouts. The modification is to carefully clean up the contact points so there's no splitting and all the rest of the stuff. And as I think I said in an earlier diagram, I created the track plans on RailMod or Pro software, and it has been beautiful because if I want to have any kind of a blow up of what I'm working on, all I have to do is take a screen save and print out the screen save, and then I can look at exactly what I'm doing in a specific section. My bud yard the idea for it comes from Versailles, and it's going to be a very heavy ops area with plenty of switching runaround room and buildings very close in prototype to Idaho Falls, which is a long way from Whitefish, Montana, but so be it. It's still going to have that plant. It contains the most important reversing loop to and from the helix in the staging yard. So if you see on the bottom, you see where the track kind of comes in. You see the big reversing loop going around the right-hand side and coming back. That lets me bring a train up, always face engine forward, and going eastbound and westbound, depending upon how I route it through the reversing loop. So that yard has both operations and reversing loop in it. A little complex. It'll probably have a dedicated yard master when we do operations. Next one. The Whitefish main yard has been done 2 or 3 times. This is going to be probably the real final. On the upper left-hand side, the blue section contains basically a maintenance area. And I want to tell you a little bit about how that took in place. Some of you have already perhaps begun working with some of these AI companies. I use Perplexity. And I asked Perplexity a question about building a maintenance yard for my model train. And it came back and told me what to do. I'm not kidding you. It came out and it asked, where were you planning on doing this? If you got a location? And I said, Whitefish, Montana. And the stupid thing comes back and says, no kidding, really? This exact thing would work perfectly in Whitefish, Montana. So it literally told me how I needed to go about it step by step to create a single track fueling, sand, and water thing. It's interesting. The maintenance away storage in the upper section is going to be pretty much for show and tell. It's not really going to be used for any kind of stuff, I'm going to have a snow plow and stuff like that. And then fueling and sanding pad is what I just talked about. And then I'm block switching the barley and the lumber. Barley here at Idaho Falls on the left, and over on the right, the lumber in Columbia. So the local trains will bring stuff from that yard, from the bud yard, and park them on the right-hand side. You see over there about 7 legs there. Those will be stored and forward sections where the local train will drop off barley cars, both new and empty, and then wood products stuff will come in from Columbia Falls. Next one. There's the Columbia Falls yard. The 2 biggest parts on the left and right and center are the wood products services. And you can see all of the tracks there for new and used and new stuff coming in. And not in the wood, I'm sorry, nothing new coming in. It comes in by truck. And you see the truck track across the top. It's amazing. Nobody ships logs anymore on the rails. They all come by truck. They ship a lot of lumber out by rail. And that's what this place will do. The far right-hand side is what was left in 1995 of a huge Anaconda aluminum smelter plant. That, if you could believe it, it was at the base of the Glacier National Park area. And those things are really dirty, fluoride gases and all the rest of the stuff coming out. And you got to say to yourself, why in the hell would they put an aluminum smelter in the park? Bottom line is, everybody in the town went, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, because it was a job and it paid very good money. But finally it ran out, man, and it's now a cleanup site full of all sorts of bad stuff. The lower level, the next, go ahead, Bob. So there's my staging yard. See the helix? Helix comes down, you go into a 5-track section, and you can store multiple trains in there. The dispatcher is going to sit underneath the deck in that blue area with his ability to control all of the switches. And he has the ability to do an escape. You'll notice if a train's in the wrong place, he can bring it out and see the escape path on the far left-hand side. He can come back in and re-enter the storage area. So I can bring out whatever train I really want to do, depending on. But they'll be stored back to back, if you want to call it that. And there's room for about 5 trains in each one of those tracks. So 6-turn helix, 36-inch diameter helix, double-sided staging tracks, each 30 feet long. Translation, 15 trains in each with 50 to 20 cars each. 15 to 20 cars is the limit of my trains because of that big reversing loop. that brings them down and in. I can't do anything bigger than 15 or 20 cars. So it's a realistic, uncomplicated, protected yard for sequential operation operated by a single yard master linked to the dispatcher. I am not doing what Larry has on his layout where he has little switches down at the bottom. Okay? There is no way for an engineer to throw a switch. He has got to call the dispatcher for that switch to get thrown, or he's going to sit there forever. Next slide. Okay, my power source is hard to see, but that top deck has my DCS 100 on the left-hand side and a complex device that I built to let me look at voltmeters, voltages, and current and all that stuff, and two great big 12-volt power supplies on the right-hand side, one for track power and the other for accessories. Next slide. The layout electronics, Digitrax controller, separate auxiliary power that I just mentioned, PM42, BDL168s, PM74s, which are new, VXPA1s, reversing loops, which are new. There are 19 power districts with detection and transponding. So theoretically, you're going to be able to look at my top of my layout and you're going to be able to see the train moving around on the JMRI screen. JMRI is going to control the DS64 mainline turnouts, and we have smart Wi-Fi throttles, and we'll of course have JMRI also for you to be able to use Y-throttle type throttles. My yards will all use a very special capacitive discharge lighted toggle control for all yard switches. And that's one of the prices I had to pay for using CatoTrack. CatoTrack does not give you, the turnout does not give you any help at deciding whether the that track is operated or closed. So how the hell, if it doesn't give you that, where do you get the information to light their lights for the signals? So a friend of yours and mine, John Gorman, and I invented a system of Arduino controlled lighted speed and interlocking signal control for that whole main double line. The design is complete and it works. Signaling electronics is, this is now lighting. The red and green lights. Dispatcher control double main. The ops teams cannot operate the turnouts, and there are 20 Cato turnouts in the ops section. They're adopted for signaling use during an owner-designed Arduino signaling logic circuitry, talking about what John and I built. And there are critical turnouts provided with fail-safe track power. What's fail-safe track power? If you think about the fact you got to control a reversing section on it, okay? That reversing section has to have the track turned in and coming this way, and then you got to turn it again. Well, what happens if you forget to turn it again? The train's still coming on the other track, and it's going to run into that, and you're going to have a little disaster on your hands. So the simple way of doing that is when that's all taking place, you take power off the track. The minute the train gets on there, there's no power for it. So there's a circuit that's in there that does that fail-safe track power. Next one, Bob. There is the special stuff. Hard to see in the room lighting, but those things were all designed by John and I, and circuit boards purchased, circuit equipment put on it, soldering it, and all the rest of the stuff, and then wiring it. And you can see that it's gotten pretty complex. Next picture. There, go back one. My control cabinets are on the right-hand side. There are the 5 DS64s. So there's the 20 turnouts that I've got in there. The BDL168s are on there, one on top of each other on the right-hand side. And the back of that board has all the other stuff. Very detailed and complex wiring here. And I spent probably the better part of a year working here. And I am I am smart enough to be able to do this by myself. I didn't have anybody else help me. And that was kind of intentionally because I didn't want somebody else doing something that could be wrong, and then I didn't know what was done. And I got to tell you, there's a point at which you got to just trust yourself and bear the whole thing, or do like a couple of other guys that I've seen layouts where you climb underneath the layout and it's just a maze of wires, and you say to yourself, how could anybody ever shoot a case of trouble in here? That's not the case in my layout. Next slide. Modern operations is what I will be doing. I already have my dispatcher AP. I'm designing a continued sequence of modern blocked, switched units and manifest trains. The switching yard itself represents Chicago and the Pacific Northwest endpoints of Seattle and Portland. 2 Amtrak trains, one eastbound and one westbound, will be in each session. Some transcontinental unit trains will make appearances in the yard for block switching activities in the Whitefish yard, but some of them will just be through trains. It'll be designed for 4 to 8 person operating sessions with train running, yard switching, and dispatching. Any questions?